Today we have a wonderful show. Beth Ruscio will read her poetry, and then Wisława Szymborska's poetry. Beth Ruscio, daughter of actors, is a published poet and an accomplished actor. In her salad days, she was a bartender, banquet waitress, caterer, executive secretary, and for her first job, she detasseled corn. She is the recipient of numerous poetry honors as a finalist for the Wilder Prize, the Sunken Garden Prize, Tupelo Quarterly Prize, and the two Sylvia's Prize. As an actor, she's won the Drama Critics Circle Award, 5 Dramalog Awards, 3 LA Weeklies, and Best Actress at the Method Fest. With her husband, the gifted playwright Leon Martel, she's the co-author of their play, 1961 El Dorado. In late 2020, her first collection, Speaking Parts, won the Brick Road Poetry Prize. In his Cultural Weekly Review, John Brantingham wrote, quote, "Speaking Parts is an exceptional collection. Beth Ruscio has spent a career acting, and she is able to bring the wisdom of that career with her to show us what it means to be human." Here's a brilliant poet, Beth Ruscio.
Oh gosh, thank you, Harry. And thank you so much for nominating me to do this. Until I got into Szymborska's work more, I didn't realize what a good warm-up act, a good little warm-up act I am for her poetry. So it's still raining here. It's been raining cats and dogs. And so I'm going to read this poem that is not in my book, and everything else I read will be from my book. But this starts out like most poems to be about one thing, and it ends up being about something else. Mind the rain was falling in rivers full. Letters from the Californian mines, 1851 to 1852. In a ruined village, valiant failures lingered, enduring reversal. Gazelles in league with weasels, swine disguised as maidens, Magdalene goats in fever heat. Never mind. The villains, the generals, and the sun engaged in mudslinging, deadening us. We defended fear if it meant gaining order. We did need relief. Finesse was defensive, feverfew in migraines useless. Frail were the evergreens. We tried, guessed, tired, senseless, never left. Nightingales saw all this as a universe in free fall. It wasn't red dawn that unnerved us, dear reader. It was mean sleep, and after rain, wet ashes. So the first poem I'm going to read from my book is called, and I think it might be a favorite of yours, Harry's. It's called Towards an Uneasy Love for Ophelia. Oh, you scattered, fragmented wisp, you shattered flower pot shard, you torch singer with no sense of pitch, how much I have learned at your expense, from plight to plight. Your "I, my lord," and "I think nothing, my lord," that load you choke down, that we are born to be mastered, you pawed over unlucky charm. Yet, what would I give for a sure and certain place in the chain of being? How easy for pigeons to curtsy, how safe, fixed at the feet of oaks among vines, beneath a seraphim canopy, to coast above the work-song clack of shellfish and the livelong undertow. And how much I ache for a faith like yours, its wobbly legs, its puppiness, how soft to give everything over, every muscle, every ghost, to the collapsing fugue, to sleep. Because anyway, we are all of us weak, crying, "Uncle, Life is weakness, and in every ending, we all lose the will, and the victory is without stones in your pockets, and the river is your answer. Oh, Ophelia, you deliver me from believing in ceilings, from the sway of swinging from some chandelier, and hearing what you would say come out of my mouth. Who could deny me my moment of frailty? Talk me down from what ledge? Keep me from keening about my own stage, to be a bad joke in the making? For want of what would I press on? But Ophelia, you disaster, you take my breath away. From the stinging nettles in your hair to the reeds in your teeth, as you breach the last lock so placidly, you darling damned. Counting off whites on the fingers of one hand. Alabaster. Halloween is soon, people sizing up their disguises like an inside joke. Trash to Treasure's thrift store holds an annual sale this time of year on used wedding dresses. A large party of empty gowns hangs, deflated, in an October picture window, not one among them what I'd call a pure white. Cream. It's my Tuesday custom to walk by that place on the way to the farmer's market. I am soothed by seasonal turnover, silhouette portraits on sale at Groundhog's Day. Next up, Valentine's boxer shorts. Strawberries before rhubarb, before figs. I know tests for best. The freckliest, teen fuzziest peaches have secret sugar. The lowliest apricots about to turn to mush produce brandy approaching the finest cognac. Bone. It runs in my family. The love of the shabby genteel, the fostering of underdogs. I married wearing a broken-in vintage frock, saved, ironed into a precise rectangle and tucked between layers of acid-free tissue, the second-hand floor-length gown with train that my sisters saw me try on and burst into tears. Handkerchief cotton batiste, mother of pearl buttons like a row of peas all the way down the spine, lace choking up at the throat. Never materialized the daughter I saved it for. Champagne. The lady at Parisian dry cleaners, a bridal gown specialiste, employed mortuary words to assure me that the eternity keepsake box in which my dress, propped up on cardboard breasts, was vacuum sealed and came with a lifetime guarantee. Which lifetime? Or whose? The marriage, that's something else, she said. Love is more than a late night snack. I don't wonder. My husband's not one for staying up. Oldest son of a French-speaking farmer. He's awake before cows are. Eggshell. Thin. We called these the blown out years. Around this time, I went to a dead, undead Halloween costume party as my latest head cold. Excuse me. Smeared red lipstick on the rims of my eyes, Vicks Vapo Rub behind my ears, pinned Kleenex ghosts around the neck of a long black Morticia maxi. For such plainly faked misery, I got a lot of real sympathy. It brought out a faint lime tenderness in the zombie men. I've built in these little light motifs between my set and Szymborska, so you You'll find some of these same ideas popping up in her poems, miraculously enough. Taken to the soil. In late September, the ground he picked out, warm yet, the boy lay down. His human days over, he had taken quite devoutly to the soil. Fall was heavy, drifts of rust, ballast for the voyage. He felt the knot in his stomach unspool, become taproot, his spine douse for loam. He let his lungs fill with spores, dust, the cast-off wings of insects. He matched his breath to the suck of the wind as glint ebbed to thrum, then hush. He let the earth hear him out. Each day before school, his sister fills a bottle from the tap, carries it to him by the neck. Evenings, she scatters coffee grounds flecked with gleaming eggshells, and quietly she stretches out next to him, their faces close as crossing lights. This poem is inspired by Richard Widmark in, I'm going to forget the name of the movie. Oh, in Night in the City. It's called Double Cross. The wind will rat you out like a rotary dial racking back like footsteps on the floor overhead, grinding grit into a hardwood knot. Your shiny-eyed confidence comes on like distraction, a loud blaze of checkered past, jacket, tie, and plastered on, man, oh man, that combustible smile. So what's a foolproof plan worth? Who says there's no glory in comeuppance? It's little you against expensive suits, glass-paned cages, steep staircases, suspension bridges, streets slicked down with dusk, that squalid stretch of river, late. Get a clue. Do nothing. Walk away. Wake up. The next sure thing's barbiturate. The more you beg, the calmer your nerve. You're a small timer, itching for big, spending large on one last take, one eye out for the back way. 'Cause every low-slung slipper club might be the next Venus flytrap. It's in the furry air, babe. Tonight, tomorrow night, or any night. Listen to the band play Twilight Time. Catch how casually the guy sounds like Judas drops your name. The house goes to half. The theater, this is an epigraph. The theater is a place to which one goes less in the hope of complete illusion than in the hope of being only halfway disillusioned. At places for the Sunday matinee, top of Act 2, the actress suffers. Her sweaty wig itches something terrible. The exit signs abruptly extinguish. The huge room closes in as if by massive descending cloak. Little squeals erupt, trilled off steam of expectation. The audience wants a carpet ride, or at least a small bonfire. In the wings, behind the drapes they call tormentors, she waits. She'll make the same down left cross from last night, 18 hours ago, and from the matinee, 6 before that. facing the matte side of the flimsy night scrim, the peeling stickum rind stars above her, the blue gelled backstage air, tense, that certain end of the week tang wafting off of Elizabethan costumes. And then, in a self-willed trance, the character's lofty thoughts commence to crowd out her petty cares again, to the 1,000 pitches submit, and what scabs for art she's obliged to pick 8 shows a week. On the hook for a 2-hour life, borrowed off the balance of her own. The words committed to mind, fine combed over for nuance, raveled, unraveled, rehearsed to sound composed on the spot. Pauses an IBAT long. Pauses all the king's horses could ride through. Her seasoned body an instrument of verse. Channel for the precise note stranded in a long suppressed oh, and beneath sound, the felted silence, a stealth text, the prickly underpinning for the whine of her character's charge. And I have borne and borne and borne and have been fubbed off and fubbed off and fubbed off from this day to that day. All of it said never before this way. And again she will enter, all decked out. The follow spot sun will dog her every step, racking hot on the rising and falling of her lilac powder puffed chest. The Lico lights will widen like a dilated pupil. The Fresnels will go full tilt. The combustion of all that pyrotechnic attention. Wow! For this one moment of the day, twice on Saturdays and Sundays, her rounded, ruddy face is a vision from which it will be impossible to look away. In her period corset, tight, vice-tight, her voice strains. She's running out of air, so she will use it, this breathlessness, to sound whispery and coarse, her pleasance on edge. Effortlessness is 99% perspiration. All so that a lone woman's plaintive voice may insist to these listeners, playing out past the rafters and beyond this little room's sweet spot. Our Lady of Desires was Marcel Duchamp's pet name for his very last sculpture. It was as an installation. It took him 20 years. He worked on it. And here is an epigraph from him. The creative act is not performed by the artist alone. Marcel Duchamp. Our Lady of Desires. He lays her blank body down while it's being assembled, supple as a late afternoon, open for creation, his touch inventing her, his hands father her every curve. Then carefully wrapping, he puts her away where she will crack. For years, he fixes her, closes her tears, layer upon layer fashions her, expressionless, suspended like a swollen plum in garnet syrup, half hidden from him, especially him. He stares at her, cherishes her stared at. From a great height falls a river, cutting loose a rushing grace. The fading light ripens the very moment fruit splits. Let the dusk clothe her, now detach with abandon Oh, nice touch. The gas lamp. His, 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 his. We'll sing. The blind know about daydreams. Darla, this makeup artist I worked with, had some horrible crack up. Got her face Frankenstein back on sideways with staples. She looked pieced together mid-seizure. So Darla startled the stars. Well, everyone at first. Though a self-deprecating way can go far in Hollywood, surprisingly. Oh, I don't mind the stares, she liked to joke. Being shunned is worse. She had to begin long before dawn, laboring over her face. Rutted scarlet running welts, ruby grafts and rilled edges pinked into her forehead. She slathered on her Joe Blasco #1 concealer, yellow distracts red. Then she'd strap a see-through sling of mortician-made illusion to her shattered in 9 places chin. 2 hair pieces, a Polynesian fall, and a fringe that just grazed her lashless eyes. One time, this actor, some ruthless killer type, stepped up into the makeup trailer she kept meat locker cold, got a load of Darla and gasped in a high squeak, rubbed his face, gruff, and within an instant, all was outwattaged by his flashbulb smile. In the picture business, love is just a retake away. It's an honor to work in movies, she told the make-believe killer. Attending to the beautiful, she didn't stop. Rigging perfect faces for the camera's X-ray gaze. It's a gas to match skin shades to names. You're to faces. You're Dior suntan. I'm Cinema's Secret champagne. Each face, another stray to lay hands on, she said through Invisalign teeth. Then you're mine on the day. She was serious. She really put her back into it, wielded the finest grade sandpaper, buffed off the trails of capillaries, tiny crap the high def sees, played up his facial symmetry, left side, right side, identical. It looks more demonic. All the while her face close enough and in position to kiss. She talked to her actors in the looking glass, fake face to fake face, the way we picture types converse, applying disguise after disguise, and on display, reflected in mirrors that ran the length of the trailer, all day Darla, known for her gentle, scathing, unscathed hands. And here's my last poem. Ladies Sketch Club on the beach, 1890, Pacific Grove, California. To order light, dear sister, to wield a vest pocket clock and boss around the day is not considered women's work. Yet truly I live on scrapes of Prussian blue and gamboge crimson, go through tubes and tubes of bright lead white, the cruelest white for foam and spray, an ocean pinned down with my palette knife. I'm under a raucous spell of light, and the sea swelling in me, the dried colors caked under my fingernails, all the proof I need. Let my smocks, neglected, yellow and gray, I don't care. Only let me wait out for the golden hour, See how it polishes even a crude thing like my sweat to a flushed glamour. It's not order, cleanliness, not our Father's God I serve. Behold my sin, like beach tar, whiskered blackly in sand and burnt umber.
That was a fabulous reading, Beth. Thank you very much. You have so much vitality and precision and strength of narrative, and you always very specific details. And also, what I noticed in particular, your poem about Ophelia, the vulnerability. And that's always, I mean, I think that's what all of us share. If you're a jazz musician or poet or an actor, the ability to be vulnerable and to share that vulnerability. Let's just take one of your poems, if you don't mind, the poem about Ophelia. How do you write a poem? What is your approach? What do you focus on? Let's, in that particular.
I'm so glad that you're asking me this question, Harry, because I actually set this as a challenge for myself, because Ophelia is such a, oh my Lord. I mean, she's such a wreck. I mean, she's just this wispy, character. And as an actor, I just thought, oh God, poor Ophelia. How would I ever play her? So I gave myself the task of trying to get inside of, what she had going for her. not what I was having problems with, but what her life was like. And, there is a kind of, geez, wouldn't it be great if we all knew like where we were in the chain of being, like we didn't aspire to be anything else, but we were actually just like in our little lane. That's all that was expected of us. I mean, I don't think I would be happy, but I tried to understand who would be happy with just that little lane and, being mastered by men and, the times that she lived in. So I feel like this was an exercise that Cecilia Wallach gave us once in a workshop, kind of modeled after another poem that she read to us. And she said, do that, try that. And this was what I tried. And I thought it was incumbent on me to find some of the language of Shakespeare in the poem. So hidden like little Easter eggs in that poem is a phrase like at the end of line breaks, to be, which is like the famous soliloquy of Hamlet's, to be or not to be, is at the end of on the 1, 2, 3, fourth stanza. Also, and the end of that line in this poem is to be a bad joke in the making. So not to be or not to be, but to be a bad joke. Or uncle, crying uncle, life is weakness. And then, historically, women, creative women, have been challenged to write about something other than what was in their lane, like, domestic things and flowers. That women were traditionally in olden times in poetry, kind of dissuaded from writing about world events or big things. That was like men's territory. So a lot of my own project as a writer is to break into the room, to write about stuff that I want to write about, regardless of who tells me whether I can write about it or not. It's kind of the same thing that I admire about Szymborska. She's writing about things in a very charming way, but deceptively. They're huge, the things that she's writing about. And as I was taking the deep dive into her work, I realized how very much she had inspired me with my own work, just even in terms of subject matter. It was kind of subliminal, really. I mean, I can say that I'm sort of, promiscuous, because I love all kinds of poets and I fall in love really easily. So when you gave me the assignment to find a poet I loved and who influenced me, it's like a candy store. I'm so glad though that I arrived at this and that you said, yeah, do that.
Well, that's
I
good.
didn't really answer your question, did I?
No, you did it very well. Your poetry is very full of life and vitality, and you're a very conscious writer. And just a quick question before I introduce the next poet. How do you start a poem? I mean, it sounded to me like you explained you had an assignment. Do you focus on words? Do you have an idea? Do you see an image? How do you?
A lot of time, yeah. A lot of times I'll be staring into space. I'll be taking a walk. And I always have paper with me, and something will just, because really to be a poet is to be alive to paying attention. And I love that I have permission to be any kind of artist, really. To be any kind of artist is to be in the moment and to pay attention. And as a poet, to pay attention to things that maybe other people haven't quite paid attention to that same way. And so some idea will strike me and it'll like work its way into my head and it'll gnaw away at my brain. And I'll wake up in the night. And I mean, my husband's a writer too, so we've got paper and pens all over the place. Just, pieces of paper, scraps of stuff, Kleenex. I mean, Leon used to write on his hand. And then he wouldn't wash his hand until, he'd written down whatever it was he'd written on his hand. So it's a wonderful, sorry, trees. We've used a lot of paper in our lives, but for good uses. So but like being an actor, it's somewhat a mystery how these things come to me. I have to be comfortable that I'm not gonna know where it's gonna lead me. I have to just like take some idea's hand and go into the dark and, get lost.
Well, you bring us light. And just one quick question. Do you rewrite?
Oh my God, are you kidding? Yes. Constantly. I'm, even as I'm reading the poems that are published in this book, I'm thinking, is that really the right word? So, but I try not to, I try to, now that I'm getting older, I try to, not be quite so, but I'm extremely, I'm always searching for the right thing, and when I know it's not right, it just drives me crazy, or not crazy. It's a good thing. It drives me to just, be distracted all the time. Leon and I will say to each other, I know it looks like I'm not doing anything, but I'm writing.
Thank you for your fabulous writing. And now we'll move on to the second half of the program. Wisława Szymborska, born in 1923 in Western Poland, belonged to a brilliant generation of Polish poets, many of whom died in the Warsaw Uprising. Poland lost 1/5 of its population, and young writers such as Zbigniew Herbert and Szymborska felt the crushing burden of speaking for those who did not survive the German occupation. She won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1996 and died in Krakow, where she had lived most of her life, in 2012 at the age of 88. About her poetry, The New Yorker wrote, Szymborska captures the nightmarish contingency of human survival and the human callousness toward nature with an ironic elegance miraculously free of bitterness. Here's Beth Ruscio to talk about Szymborska and read her poetry.
Let me begin by acknowledging her great translators from Polish, Claire Kavanagh and Stanislaw Baranczyk. Having studied so many poets who are not always translated so great, These two translators are aces. Oh my Lord. Because I've read other translators of Szymborska's work, and they kind of just melded, they married with her sounds and with her, I don't read Polish, but they're poets themselves. So let me just say that. She won the Nobel Prize, and she said, according to one of those translators, she said that she had sacrificed a poem in the form of her Nobel address. She said that's why it's so short. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from this Nobel speech because they are poetry, and they also give you a great introduction to her sensibility. All sorts of torturers, dictators, fanatics, and demagogues struggling for power with a few loudly shouted slogans also enjoy their jobs, and they too perform their duties with inventive fervor. But they know, and whatever they know is enough for them once and for all. They don't want to find out about anything else, since that might diminish the force of their arguments. This is why I value that little phrase, "I don't know," so highly. It's small, but it flies on mighty wings. The world, it is astonishing. Granted, in daily speech, where we don't stop to consider every word, we all use phrases such as the ordinary world, ordinary life, the ordinary course of events. But in the language of poetry, where every word is weighed, nothing is usual or normal. Not a single stone and not a single cloud above it, not a single day and not a single night after it, and above all, not a single existence, not anyone's existence in this world. She had this very tender heart. One of the people introduced her as saying that as a child she had a pet hedgehog that fell in love with a scrubbing brush. And she was trying to make it work out. So that's a little anecdote about Szymborska that I thought would be great to share, because what a character. Okay. In praise of my sister. My sister doesn't write poems, and it's unlikely that she'll suddenly start writing poems. She takes after her mother, who didn't write poems, and also her father, who likewise didn't write poems. I feel safe beneath my sister's roof. My sister's husband would rather die than write poems. And even though this is starting to sound as repetitive as Peter Piper, the truth is none of my relatives write poems. My sister's desk drawers don't hold old poems, and her handbag doesn't hold new ones. When my sister asks me over for lunch, I know she doesn't want to read me her poems. Her soups are delicious without ulterior motives. Her coffee doesn't spill on manuscripts. There are many families in which nobody writes poems, but once it starts up, it's hard to quarantine. Sometimes poetry cascades down through the generations, creating fatal whirlpools where family love may founder. My sister has tackled oral prose with some success, but her entire written opus consists of postcards from vacations, whose text is only the same promise every year. When she gets back, she'll have so much, much, much to tell. There's a couple of words in this next poem. One of them is holothurian, which is a sea cucumber. And the other one is a Latin phrase from a Horace poem, non omnis moriar. Autonomy. In danger, the holothurian cuts itself in two. It abandons one self to a hungry world, and with the other self, it flees. It violently divides into doom and salvation, retribution and reward, what has been and what will be. An abyss appears in the middle of its body between what instantly become two foreign shores. Life on one shore, death on the other. Here hope and there despair. If there are scales, the pans don't move. If there is justice, this is it. To die just as required, without excess, to grow back just what's needed from what's left. We too can divide ourselves, it's true, but only into flesh and a broken whisper, into flesh and poetry. The throat on one side, laughter on the other, quiet, quickly dying out. Here, the heavy heart, there, non omnis moriar, which means I shall not wholly die. Just three little words, like a flight's three feathers. The abyss doesn't divide us. The abyss surrounds us. The end and the beginning. After every war, somebody has to tidy up. Things won't pick themselves up, after all. Someone has to shove the rubble to the roadside so the carts loaded with corpses can get by. Someone has to trudge through sludge and ashes, through the sofa springs, the shards of glass, the bloody rags. Someone has to lug the post to prop up the wall. Someone has to glaze the window, set the door in its frame. No sound bites, no photo opportunities, and it takes years. All the cameras have gone to other wars. The bridges need to be rebuilt, the railroad stations too. Shirt sleeves will be rolled to shreds. Someone, broom in hand, still remembers how it was. Someone else listens, nodding his unshattered head. But others are bound to be bustling nearby, who will find all that a little boring. From time to time, someone still must dig up a rusted argument from underneath a bush and haul it off to the dump. Those who knew what this was all about must make way for those who know little and less than that, and at last, nothing less than nothing. You know, Szymborska was born in 1923, and for her 16th birthday, Hitler invaded her country. So she lived, if there's anybody who could write about perilous times, it's her. And these next few poems address those kinds of things. This first poem is called Identification. It's good you came, she says. You heard a plane crashed on Thursday? Well, so they came to see me about it. The story is he was on the passenger list. So what? He might have changed his mind. They gave me some pills so I wouldn't fall apart. Then they showed me I don't know who. All black, burned except one hand. A scrap of shirt, a watch, a wedding ring. I got furious. That can't be him. He wouldn't do that to me, look like that. The stores are bursting with those shirts. The watch is just a regular old watch. And our names on that ring, they're only the most ordinary names. It's good you came. Sit here beside me. He really was supposed to get back Thursday, but we've got so many Thursdays left this year. I'll put the kettle on for tea. I'll wash my hair, then try to wake up from all this. It's good you came, since it was cold there, and him just in some rubber sleeping bag. Him, I mean, you know, that unlucky man. I'll put the Thursday on, wash the tea, since our names are completely ordinary. Photograph from September 11th. They jumped from the burning floors. 1, 2, a few more, higher, lower. The photograph halted them in life and now keeps them above the earth, toward the earth. Each is still complete with a particular face and blood well hidden. There's enough time for hair to come loose, for keys and coins to fall from pockets. They're still within the air's reach, within the compass of places that have just now opened. I can do only 2 things for them: describe this flight and not add a last line. Consolation. Darwin. They say he read novels to relax, but only certain kinds. Nothing that ended unhappily. If anything like that turned up enraged, he flung the book into the fire. True or not, I'm ready to believe it. Scanning in his mind so many times and places, he'd had enough of dying species, the triumphs of the strong over the weak, the endless struggles to survive, all doomed sooner or later. He'd earned the right to happy endings, at least in fiction. Hence the indispensable silver lining. The lovers reunited, the families reconciled, the doubts dispelled, fidelity rewarded, fortunes regained, treasures uncovered, stiff-necked neighbors mending their ways, good names restored, greed daunted, old maids married off to worthy parsons, troublemakers banished to other hemispheres, forgers of documents tossed down the stairs, seducers scurrying to the altar, orphans sheltered, widows comforted, pride humbled, wounds healed over, prodigal sons summoned home, cups of sorrow thrown into the ocean, hankies drenched with tears of reconciliation, general merriment and celebration, and the dog, Fido, gone astray in the first chapter, turns up barking gladly in the last. Example. A gale stripped all the leaves from the trees last night except for one leaf left to sway solo on a naked branch. With this example, violence demonstrates that, yes, of course, it likes its little jokes from time to time. Tortures. Nothing has changed. The body is a reservoir of pain. It has to eat and breathe the air and sleep. It has thin skin and the blood is just beneath it. It has a good supply of teeth and fingernails. Its bones can be broken. Its joints can be stretched. In tortures, all of this is considered. Nothing has changed. The body still trembles as it trembled before Rome was founded and after, in the 20th century, before and after Christ. Tortures are just what they were, only the earth has shrunk, and whatever goes on sounds as if it's just a room away. Nothing has changed, except there are more people, and new offenses have sprung up beside the old ones. Real, make-believe, short-lived, and non-existent. But the cry with which the body answers for them was, is, and will be a cry of innocence in keeping with the age-old scale and pitch. Nothing has changed, except perhaps the manners, ceremonies, dances, the gesture of the hands shielding the head has nonetheless remained the same. The body writhes, jerks, and tugs, falls to the ground when shoved, pulls up its knees, bruises, swells, drools, bleeds. Nothing has changed, except the run of rivers, the shape of forests, shores, deserts, and glaciers. The little soul roams around those landscapes, disappears, returns, draws near, moves away, evasive, and a stranger to itself, now sure, now uncertain of its own existence, whereas the body is, and is, and is, and has nowhere to go. The centuries decline. Our 20th century was going to improve on the others. It will never prove it now that its years are numbered. Its gait is shaky, its breath is short. Too many things have happened that weren't supposed to happen, and what was supposed to come about has not. Happiness and spring, among other things, were supposed to be getting closer. Fear was expected to leave the mountains and the valleys. Truth was supposed to hit home before a lie. A couple of problems weren't going to come up anymore. Hunger, for example, and war, and so forth. There was going to be respect for helpless people's helplessness, trust, that kind of stuff. Anyone who planned to enjoy the world is now faced with a hopeless task. Stupidity isn't funny. Wisdom isn't gay. Hope isn't that young girl anymore, etc., alas. God was finally going to believe in a man both strong and good. But strong and good are still two different men. How should we live? Someone asked me in a letter. I had meant to ask him the same question. Again, and as ever, as may be seen above, the most pressing questions are naive ones. Miracle Fair. The commonplace miracle that so many common miracles take place. The usual miracle. Invisible dogs barking in the dead of the night. One of many miracles. A small and airy cloud is able to upstage the massive moon. Several miracles in one. An alder is reflected in the water and is reversed from left to right and grows from crown to root and never hits bottom, though the water isn't deep. A run-of-the-mill miracle. Winds mild to moderate turning gusty in storms. A miracle in the first place. Cows will be cows. Next, but not least, just this cherry orchard from just this cherry pit. A miracle minus top hat and tails. Fluttering white doves. A miracle, what else can you call it? The sun rose today at 3:14 a.m. and will set tonight at 8:01. A miracle that's lost on us. The hand actually has fewer than 6 fingers, but still, it's got more than 4. A miracle, just take a look around the inescapable earth. An extra miracle, extra and ordinary. The unthinkable can be thought. Theater impressions. For me, the tragedy's most important act is the 6th, the raising of the dead from the stage's battlegrounds, the straightening of wigs and fancy gowns, removing knives from stricken breasts, taking nooses from lifeless necks, lining up among the living to face the audience, the bows, both solo and ensemble, the pale hand on the wounded heart, the curtsies of the hapless suicide, the bobbing of the chopped off head, the bows in pairs. Rage extends its arm to meekness. The victim's eyes smile at the torturer. The rebel indulgently walks beside the tyrant. Now enter single file the hosts who died early on, in Acts 3 and 4, or between scenes, the miraculous return of all those lost without a trace. The thought that they've been waiting patiently off stage without taking off their makeup or their costumes moves me more than all the tragedies, tirades. But the curtains fall is the most uplifting part. The things you see before it hits the floor. Here, one hand quickly reaches for a flower, then another hand picks up a fallen sword. Only then one last unseen hand does its duty and grabs me by the throat. And here's my last poem from Szymborska. Wisława Szymborska, Among the Multitudes. I am who I am, a coincidence no less unthinkable than any other. I could have different ancestors after all. I could have fluttered from another nest or crawled, bescaled from another tree. Nature's wardrobe holds a fair supply of costumes: spider, seagull, field mouse. Each fits perfectly right off and is dutifully worn into shreds. I didn't get a choice either, but I can't complain. I could have been someone much less separate, someone from an anthill, shoal, or buzzing swarm, an inch of landscape ruffled by the wind. Someone much less fortunate, bred for my fur or Christmas dinner, something swimming under a square of glass. A tree rooted to the ground as the fire draws near. A grass blade trampled by a stampede of incomprehensible events. A shady type whose darkness dazzled some. What if I'd prompted only fear, loathing, or pity? If I'd been born in the wrong tribe, with all the roads closed before me? Fate has been kind to me thus far. I might never have been given the memory of happy moments. My yen for comparison might have been taken away. I might have been myself minus amazement. That is, someone completely different.
That was an astounding reading. You have so much understanding, and the reading was just perfect. And she has the ability to go from like that one poem about tortures where she keeps saying nothing has changed, and then she tells us how the landscape has changed, and she has the ability to look at small little details along with the eternal verities. What do you think? Well, I see Jennifer here, and she's always so aware and insightful about readings. And what would you like to say about this exceptional reading, Jennifer?
It was exceptional. And Beth, I hope that you had the chance to see all of the comments from the people who are watching. We've got a really nice crowd gathered. It had such a real grounding in reality. Sorry, that's redundant. It was grounded in reality. It made me feel those intricacies. The specificity is something that Harry talks about a lot.
The particulars, yeah.
The particulars. And the particulars in the poetry that you created, that you read at the first half of the show, that's what's still resonating with me. So, yeah.
Well, I'm humbled to be on the same bill with Szymborska. I mean, she's really, look at those poems of hers. Oh my Lord. And look at, what might have happened to her. She might have become bitter. The fact that she, that last poem I read, that last line just kills me. I might have been myself minus amazement. Hitler when she was 16, then Stalin later. I mean, all of her, a lot of Polish writers were wiped out. And the ones that were left were really they were carrying a big burden. You know, they were trying to speak for all this generation of writers that had been wiped out. And, you know, and it was weightless. You know, what I quoted her saying in the Nobel speech, you know, I don't know, you know, this weightless thing, you know, the way to look at the world, like, I don't know. I don't have answers. I only have questions, which I really think is, I mean, wouldn't you agree, Harry, that it's the kind of the poet's aspiration to just continue, you know, just to never run out of questions?
Well, you gave us a lot of answers today. You took us to church, you took us to Poland, you took us to war, you took us, as Jennifer pointed out, to particular places. So it's 2:00 and we have to move on, but thank you. It was a perfect coupling between two wonderful poets. Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you, Jennifer.